let's get straight into it, mate. Tough one as always, the QBs. There's not too many options, especially when we're talking. Well, we have a super flex league, but most leagues are QB1, so there's not too many relevant players in this position. But who would be your buy low QB target if you had to pick one?
Yeah, so this is probably going to be for super flex, but I've gone with Cam Newton. He scored 3.9 points this week. Had a bit of a stinker, but he scores quite a few rushing touchdowns. And I mean, if you need a QB2, he's still a solid QB2 in my opinion going forward. And he's got a decent schedule. Nothing unreal, but like not too hard either.
Yeah, he only threw the ball 18 times on the weekend, but the game script suited them, which probably won't be the case in most weeks moving forward. This week, not sure. They're up against the Chargers. That could go either way, but yeah, I think he would be a pretty solid QB2. Not quite in that QB1 range, I don't reckon.
Yeah.
Not sure what you think, but yeah, probably a solid QB2, especially given the form of some of the QB2 candidates of late, blokes like Wentz and stuff, not doing great. So yeah, he would be a solid QB2. Mine's actually your man. I don't know how you rate him, but I've gone Lamar Jackson. Actually didn't play this week, so he's as low as you can go, basically, in terms of a buy low. But I'm not really that strong on this one, but I just don't think there's too many buy low options, especially if we're talking about QB1s. There's a few in Superflex and QB2 leagues, but the commentators were talking in this morning's game. That's the Steelers-Ravens that was on Wednesday Night Football. And they were saying that they reckon this break for Lamar actually might help him out. And I don't know, that really just struck a chord with me. I think that might be a fair guess, to be honest. I can imagine, like, even though you want to be getting consistency and rhythm into your game, for him taking like a week and a half off is probably not the worst case scenario given his recent form. So I think it might be good for him. He's had a really tough run of fixtures of late, played a lot of good teams. They've played the Steelers, the Colts, the Titans, just to name a few. And this week they've got the Browns, who aren't an easy opponent, but they have a really bad run defense, so that he might be able to find a few holes there for himself. And then they have the Jags the week after, who are bottom 10 in both run and pass defenses. So you'd think he'd score pretty well there. So yeah, if you have a certified QB1, it'd be a huge risk, but you could even look to downgrade them there and look to upgrade elsewhere. Or he could be just a straight up pickup, you could just trade for him. But yeah, a lot of risk involved, but I think there's a lot of upside to Lamar. And there's not too much value going around at week 13 of the season, but I think Lamar is probably, his average is lower than his value is, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I don't know where you sit on that as an owner of Lamar, but
yeah, no, I'm pretty optimistic. I reckon he'll come home strong. And as you just said, he's got Dallas, Cleveland, and Jacksonville coming up, which is a very good fixture. So,
yeah. And then your sell high, who you got?
Sell high, I've got your man, Deshaun Watson. I think he's valued very highly at the moment, and he just lost Will Fuller, which is going to be quite a big blow. He's going to have to rely on Cooks now. And they've got, I believe, the hardest quarterback schedule. I think Indianapolis twice and Chicago, I believe, coming up. So I would be hopping off if you can get something good for him.
Yeah. As an owner, I don't know. Like, I've been looking at the recent performances of the Colts and Bears past D's, and it's actually not been too good, but they have played a lot of good opposition. So yeah, I might be looking to offload him, but at this point of the season, it's going to be tough to get someone because he's obviously valued very highly. Like, I'm not sure what I could get for him because I don't think I'd be able to get like Herbert or something because the owners in our league are pretty stubborn with that kind of stuff. But yeah, I do think he's a sell high given how well he's played the last 2 weeks. My sell high, once again, not really the strongest believer in this one, but I've gone with Tom Brady. He's been pretty inconsistent all year, up and down kind of stuff, but he had a solid fantasy performance on the weekend. He put up 21.7 against a pretty handy Chiefs defense, but the game scripts really helped him out with this one. They were forced to come back from behind after going 17 points to 0 down after the first quarter. So he kind of had to just go for it, and it worked in his favor in terms of fantasy. They've got a bye this week, which is an instant red flag. Like, you don't really want people on buys coming to this point of the season, especially if he's like your QB1 or your QB2 in a super flex league. Um, and then his last four, we've been viewing them as really easy matchups the whole season. But if you actually look at the defense's stats that they're playing in the last month, they're actually not that good. Like, as in, they've got the Vikings, who are a top half pass defense since the start of November. Then they've got the Falcons twice, who have actually turned their defense around, and they are now a top 10 pass defense. So that's three of their last four. They do have an easy one in there. I think they have the Lions or something. So on paper, they look like easy matchups, but if you actually look at the data, it doesn't suggest that it's going to be too easy for Tom Brady and the Bucks. And also, Bruce Arians hinted in a press conference after the game on the weekend that Ronald Jones will be getting at least 25 touches a game moving forward because he reckons he's that good. So
That's
that
huge.
could suggest that they will be running more than throwing moving forward, especially if the game script suits in those kind of matches. So I think that's also something to take note of. And that's why I'd probably be hopping off the Tom Brady boat. But I don't know what his stocks are like at the moment in fantasy. Is he being regarded as a QB1?
Yeah, I reckon he is. Yeah,
Yeah, so potentially offload there.
yeah,
I think Tom Brady for Lamar is pretty unrealistic, but you could probably get something decent for him. Running backs, mate. This was another tough position this week. A lot of bad scores from the premium running backs. I was on the end of an absolute clinic from JD McKissick. Decided to put up. I've started him once, I think, and he put up his lowest score of the season. So I was really grateful for that one. But who is your buy low running back?
yeah. I've gone with Kareem Hunt here. He's in a bit of a down patch. Chubb is taking a lot of his work, but I'm still a believer. He was balling out at the start of the year with Chubb in the team. He still has a big role, and they're a huge run first offense. So, I mean, if you can get him cheap, I definitely would.
Yeah, his average is probably going to be inflated because of that period where he was the solo back. But if people look at his last 2 or 3 games, yeah, definitely a buy low option. Do you have him as just a solid RB2, or where do
Yeah,
you rate him?
I have him like probably just outside the RB1 range, I reckon, in
Yeah,
the mid-teens.
yeah. So it would be a very handy RB2 going into the playoffs. This was my last selection before the potty, so it was a bit of a rush one. But I've gone Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's just bit up and down every week, but he's got such great scoring potential because he's on the Chiefs. They're moving forward because it is going into December. They're likely to have a few more bad weather games, which will mean they will be passing less, running more. And we saw what he did when they were run first the other week. I think it was against the Broncos or something. He went off. He's still got good volume over the last 2 weeks, even though he hasn't scored that well. I think he had like 12 carries and 15 over the last 2 weeks. They've got weaker run defenses coming up as well. And yeah, coming off a 4.9, I think his stocks would be pretty low, but I think he's definitely a handy RB2 to have moving forward. I think he can put up some big scores in the playoffs for you.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
Yeah, who have you got as your sell high? I think we've got the same bloke here.
Yeah, Kenyon Drake.
Yep.
Yeah, Kenyon Drake put up 2 touchdowns, scored 24 points. I still think he's shit. He loves a game with 2 yards per carry. Doesn't he actually got a bit more passing work this week, which was interesting. I think it was
recently.
Yeah, I think it might have been his most receptions so far or near it. But Chase Edmonds is still there, so I'd still try and sell high on Drake. There'd be people out there trying to buy him, I reckon, because he had preseason hype as well.
Yeah, he's got a pretty good floor, it has to be said.
Yeah.
With receiving work now and the amount of volume, but yeah, his yards per carry sucks. I think he might get more red zone looks now that Kyle is not going to be running the ball as much, but I think overall their offense is going to take a step backwards, so I think that'll be kind of cancelling each other out. And yeah, as you said, his yards per carry, I think it was just above 3 on the weekend, and then last week I think it was in the mid 2s. So they've got harder defenses to come as well, with divisional matchups against like the Rams and the 49ers, who are both pretty solid run defenses. So yeah, I'm not too keen on Kenyon Drake. Haven't really been all year, but Like, I guess he'd probably be able to do a job for you in the RB2 slot, but yeah, I think you could get something decent for him after he went pretty big on the weekend, scoring 2 touchdowns.
I reckon
Um,
if you can trade Drake for Clyde or Kareem Hunt, I would
yeah,
definitely do it.
yeah, 100%. Wide receivers. I've gone controversial here with my buy low. Like, uh, it's hard to trade someone who just scored almost 60, but here's my wait, yeah, here's my sell high. Wait, I think I've picked. Oh yeah, no, I've done them the other way around. We'll start with the sell high for the wide receivers then. Yeah, as I mentioned, pretty controversial, but Tyreek Hill is my man. Whenever I see a score this big, I just immediately think like this is an opportunity to get insane value because the amount of hype going around Tyreek Hill over the last 2 days has been insane.
Yeah,
But that also means defense is probably gonna triple team him going forward in the next month. They have the Broncos, Dolphins, Saints, Falcons, so not an easy matchup there in terms of defenses. I just think he's obviously a great player, but I just think if you could downgrade him to another wide receiver one and then add a QB one or an RB one to it or something like that, I think it's worth it because I think he would 100% be overvalued right now in the fantasy community just because he had an absolute blinders. What did he score? Like 40 and a quarter or something like that.
yeah,
And yeah, he I don't think he's going to be bad at all going forward. I just think he's probably overvalued. That's all. But who's your sell high wide receiver?
yeah. My sell high is Deebo Samuel. Came back this week in a depleted 49ers offense, scored 24 fantasy points. But Brandon Ayuk's going to be back next week. The running backs are getting healthy, so I'm just not sure if he's going to have the targets, the opportunity to average that high. And he was pretty hyped up in the preseason, so I think people are jumping back on the bandwagon. So I reckon you could take advantage of that.
Yeah, it's
Get rid
pretty
of him.
frustrating because I think Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk are both awesome to watch. They're awesome players.
Yeah,
They have potential to be great fantasy options, but I think they both kind of ruin each other a little bit because on their own, we've seen when Ayuk was out without Samuel and then Samuel without Ayuk on the weekend, they've both been great. But I think together they might cancel each other out a little bit. They'll have weeks where they go big, but then yeah, I think they'll have a few weeks where they do nothing if their offense isn't on form.
yeah,
Yeah, so yeah, he's a good shout there. And I know you think Kittle's coming back in the next 2 weeks as well, so that might take someone away. My buy low, this is probably biased from me, but he had his lowest amount of targets in a game this season, and it was Cooper Cup. I picked him up for the week, thought it was a good option, thought he was going to steer me into the playoffs, and he's given me 6 points, but he copped a pretty hard tag from Richard Sherman, who was back for his first game since round one. And Cooper Cup, as I mentioned, only saw 5 targets, which was unheard of for Cooper Cup. He's usually in the double digits, if not 8 plus. They have the Patriots and the Jets in the first round of fantasy playoffs, so two of the worst pass defenses going on there. And I just think as a flex, he's a pretty game-changing option if you can get him in that position. And yes, he over those 2 weeks he might put up a 5 or a 10, but then the other week he might put up a 30. So I think if you've got a steady team everywhere else, I think to have a risky flex option is not a bad tactical play. And I think Cooper Cup's ideal. And with those matchups, I think he's not a bad flex for the first round of playoffs if you are in the same structure as us in terms of playoffs. But yeah, probably a little bit biased from me there. And well, to be fair, I'd probably be overreacting against him because he has dogged me with a 6. But oh well. Who's your buy low?
yeah. I've gone with a bit of an RB opportunity here, and that's Tyler Lockett. The man's value fluctuates more than anyone else in the game, so pick him up cheap after his 4 this week, and then as soon as he scores a 30, flip him for someone way better. It's a good bit of money to be made.
Yeah, I reckon
Yeah,
I'll end up with him this week.
yeah.
I had him pretty high last week, so
He's definitely a buy low though.
yeah.
After scoring 5.
Yeah, probably similar to Cup. If your team's good enough, like your team would have to be pretty elite. But if you could somehow have a team where he's your flex, like he'd probably be your flex with your wide receiver situation at the moment. like that's a pretty dangerous option because over 2 weeks, the chance that he goes big in one's actually like pretty solid
Yeah.
in that Seahawks team. So yeah, he's definitely a buy low for me. I won't be surprised if I'm chatting to you next week about how he put 3 up for me, but that's all right. Tight ends buy low. This is like he's not really a buy low because I don't think his value ever drops. I think, like you mentioned with the Kamara, I think he's at that level where he doesn't drop. But Darren Waller, he's gone 3 single digit scores over his last 5 weeks. So managers who aren't that clued up or they only look at like recent results, they don't know that much about the actual sport. I know we've got a few of those in our league. They would probably starting to get worried about Darren Waller and they might be starting to lose patience with him. And because his value is so high as at the moment with Kittle out, one of only 2 like genuine primo tight ends, I think you could get quite like I think like people would have a low patience threshold with him. Like as soon as he puts up one bad score, they'd be like, oh well, I can flip him for so much, I may as well trade him off. So I reckon he's not a bad buy low option.
Yeah.
It's not due to a lack of volume either. If he was getting 3 or 4 targets a week, then I'm starting to be worried. But he got 7 on the weekend, even though he only scored 6. So 7 targets. Darren Waller will usually catch 5 of those, and that's normally a double-digit score. But just had an off game, or Carr had an off game on the weekend. And I reckon as the Raiders go down the stretch, they're going to have some must-win games in that AFC wildcard picture. And I think they've shown in the past. We saw it with the Saints earlier on the season. He went off against the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. Whenever they play a good defense, they often lean on Waller more than they do normally. So they have the Jets this week, so he might not necessarily go big because when they play an easy team, they like to share the love. But I think down the stretch, they have teams like the Colts and stuff, and I reckon he's one of those guys where it's almost the tougher defense, the better, because they like to just pepper him when they're down. So I think Waller's not a bad buy low option at the moment, depending on his owner in your league, obviously. But yeah,
good shout there. Waller's a beast. So if you can buy him low, definitely do it. I've gone with Noah Fant. Put up a 2 purely because they had I've already forgotten his name, but
Kendall Winton or something.
Kendall, was it Hilton? I can't remember.
Yeah, Hinton. I think
Kendall Hinton. I think he had 2 completions. One of them, 1 completion. All right, so his only completion was to Noah Fant. I think it went for about 13 yards, but
solid. That's actually not bad.
Yeah, I still think he's a top 8 tight end, and he's been in pretty rough form recently. So if whoever has him is getting impatient, pick him up if you need a tight end.
Yeah, back that one in there. Absolute beast of a player is Noah Fant. My sell high is a bit unconventional here, but it's Zach Ertz. His ownership's pretty low, so it gives me the vibe that people have kind of just forgotten about him. But I know in our league, the owner has held on to him the whole time. And yeah, it sounds bizarre because he hasn't played for 2 months, but in his absence, Richard Rodgers has really risen as one of Wentz's favorite targets. With all the receivers back on the weekend, I think Rodgers still saw like 5 targets or something. So Wentz has really built a connection with him over the last 6 weeks. Goddart's been balling out as well the last couple of weeks. And Zach Ertz really struggled at the start of the year, and that was before Rieger, Fulgham, Jeffrey, and Goddard were all playing. So I just don't really see a world where Ertz comes back and absolutely kills it or sees too much volume. So also think his injury is a bit of an issue because every week it looks like he's going to come off IR and then he doesn't. So yeah, I think if you've had him on your bench this whole time, if you could sell him for anything basically, just because of his high reputation, he's still kind of known in real life terms anyway as one of the best tight ends going around.
Yep.
I think if you could flip him for anything that improves your team slightly, I think it's worth it because at this point I don't really see him coming back and being a tight end 1 or being fantasy relevant at all. So that could come back to bite me, but I just don't think it's a risk. Like I think it's kind of pointless holding on to him at this point. So yeah, I'd be getting rid of him.
Yep, not a bad shout there. I've gone with 2 blokes, Gronkowski and Hunter Henry.
Hunter
Henry's been in here every single week, and I'm starting to realise that he's actually a beast. But I still think there's a few tight ends better than these blokes. Dallas Goedert, Fant, Hawkinson, and Evan Engram, who looks to be in a new role last couple of weeks, has been balling out. So I reckon if you could sell Gronk or Hunter Henry for one of those guys, I'd probably do it.
Yeah, I back that. I don't really like the Gronk was all right on the weekend. I think he saw like 7 targets or something. But
he had 100 yards, but
his season stat line's not been too fantasy pretty. It's very TD reliant.
To be fair, though, he was putting up donuts in the first month because I'm pretty sure he was like just get working his way back. But
fat, but
he is very inconsistent.
I agree with you there. I much prefer those options you mentioned to Henry and Gronkowski. All right, time for...
It's a miracle! Oh, yeah! What about that one? No! Unbelievable! Balotelli! Aguero! Crowd cheers. Here's Siddle.